Sometimes life can get so hot and dry, and I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little bit tired. I don't know what's about to happen. Really, I don't know what's going on now. Will I survive? I know he's got a plan inside. He's up there keeping it a secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. He's up there keeping it a secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me.
My God is watching over me. I feel his love pouring down upon me. So I know that he's always there. Why is life so scary? Every day new things pop up and scare me. And even though I know God's in control, his plan is not for me to know. He's up there keeping it secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. He's up there keeping it a secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. Oh,
Life gets hard, oh life gets tough. So thank you, Lord, for your love.
oh, it may not get better, but right now I need to believe that your secret is good.
He's up there keeping it a secret.
It might be bad,
But it could be good.
surprise me.
Surprise me, Lord.
He's up there keeping it a secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. He's up there keeping it a secret, yeah. It's not for me to know yet. I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. Surprise me. Oh, surprise me, Lord. Oh, he's keeping it a secret. Ooh.
Good morning. Welcome to New Hope Community Church. Thanks for tuning in for worship today on our live stream. My name is Jeremy, and one of my primary responsibilities here at New Hope is our music. And we're known around these parts for being a little on the loud side, but that's how we like it. As you wait for the live stream to begin, I hope that you enjoy listening to the countdown. That's some of our original music. And if you'd like your very own copy of our album, we can make that happen. Just send me an email and let me know. Hey, thanks again for being here. We'll be starting soon.
From stable to a cross, his blood was shed to bear the cost. From a cross to a crown, to our knees we will bow down and worship. He was the way in a manger. He was the way for my life to be set free. Every wrong he would make right. Every darkness turned to light. He was the way. He was the way. You are the way. You are the way in a manger.
Good morning. Welcome to New Hope Community Church. It's good to have you here. And if you're new, we do want to give you a heads up. We are not what most people expect in a church. When we started in 2002, Loudonville didn't need another church. It needed one that was different. Our goal is to provide a safe and comfortable space for you to meet Jesus, no matter the circumstances life has you in. So feel free to hide behind that cup of coffee, or soft pretzel, or even that computer screen if you're tuning in online. We're glad you've joined us today. Engage in worship however you feel comfortable. Whenever you're ready to get more connected, stop and chat with someone at the Hub, or plan to join us for New to New Hope on the first Sunday of any month. We'd love the opportunity to meet you and tell you some more about who we are. For now, we want you to know that there's childcare you can trust, where your kids will learn about Jesus on their level. Find a guy in a bright orange guard shirt if you need help finding the right location. There are refreshments for purchase in the cafe, as well as free coffee, which you are more than welcome to bring into the auditorium with you. And if you'd like to sing along with the songs, don't worry. We're going to play our music loud enough for you to hide in the crowd. For those of you who want to worship God through giving, there are tall red boxes near the doors. Drop your check or cash envelope here. Or for a digital method, use the giving kiosk in the lobby. Giving online is an option for everyone, even from home. Simply choose Donate from the menu on our website, or scroll to the bottom of the screen while on any page and click the green dollar sign. Text to Give is a simple digital option. Just text the donation amount to 84321. Thank you to all of you who continue to trust God in this way. Your support allows ministry to happen in huge ways. All right, folks, it's time to get this party started. Our intent is to glorify Jesus in all that we do this morning, and we hope that you feel welcome to be a part of it. This is New Hope.
Darkness fades into new beginnings as we lift our eyes to a hope beyond. All creation waits with an expectation to declare the reign of the Lord our God. We will not be moved when the earth gives way. For the risen one is overcome, and for every fear there's an empty grave. For the risen one is overcome. Now the silence breaks in the name of Jesus, as the heavens cry, let the earth respond. Voice of triumph to declare the reign of the Lord our God. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome, and for every fear there's an empty grave. For the risen one is overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave. For the reason one is overcome. We will not be moved when the earth gives way. For the reason one is overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave. For the reason one is overcome. Before the day, before the light, before the world revolved around the sun, God on high stepped down into time and wrote the story of His love for everyone. He has filled our hearts with wonder, so that we always remember. You and I are made to worship. You and I are called to love. You and I are forgiven and free. You and I embrace surrender. You and I choose to believe. You and I will see we were meant to be. All we are, all we have, is all a gift from God that we receive. Brought to life, we open up our eyes to see the majesty and glory of the King. He has filled our hearts with wonder, so that we always remember. You and I are made to worship. You and I are called to love. You and I are forgiven and free. When you and I embrace surrender, you and I choose to believe. You and I will see we were meant to be. And even the rocks cry out, even the heavens shout at the sound of His holy name. So let every voice sing out, let every knee bow down. He's worthy of all our praise. You and I are made to worship. You and I are called to love. You and I are forgiven and free. You and I embrace surrender. You and I choose to believe. You and I will see. You and I will see. You and I are made to worship. You and I are called to love. You and I are forgiven and free. When you and I embrace surrender, you and I choose to believe. You and I will see we were meant to be. Amen. You can have a seat for a minute. confidence because I've seen the faithfulness of God, the still inside the storm, the promise of the shore. I trust the power of your word, enough to seek your kingdom first, beyond the barren place, beyond the ocean waves. When I walk through the waters, I won't be overcome. When I go through the rivers, I will not be drowned. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. You keep the promises you made. There isn't one that is delayed, so I will not lose heart. Here I will lift my arms and start to sing into the night. My praise will call the sun to rise, declare the battle won, declare that it is done. When I walk through the waters, won't be overcome. When I go through the river, I will not be drowned. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. When I am in the fire, I will not feel the flame. I'll stand before the giant, declaring victory. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. Before me, behind me, always beside me. No shadow, no valley, where you won't find me. No, I am not afraid. Before me, behind me, always beside me. No shadow, no valley, where you won't find me. No, I am not afraid. No, I am not afraid. When I walk through the waters, I won't be overcome. When I go through the rivers, I will not be drowned. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. When I am in the fire, will not feel the flame. I'll stand before the giant, declaring victory. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. No, I am not afraid. No, I am not afraid.
Amen. You can have a seat. I ask God for some pretty silly things. And then there's times where I ask God for maybe some legit stuff that He might work out for me. And then there's times where I ask God for things that even God maybe thinks is a little crazy or out of this world or too much to handle. And you probably, maybe you do that too. And a couple weeks ago, I was in the car, and the song came on, and it wrecked me, like every word. I mean, I'm not a crier, and I'm driving, I'm just like a basket case. And it talks about God today in November of 2021 is the same God. He hasn't changed. He's the same God that rescued Daniel from the lion's den. And He's the same God that gave Jesus to a virgin. And I just want you to listen to these words and then let it hit home. Let it sink in. That God, who He is, who He's always been, and He's never going to change.
this weight upon my chest, and I can't stop forgetting, my God, that you've never left. You're right here with me. Still, I'm convinced you're hiding. Oh God, would you remind me that you're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come do what only you can do. God, I need you.
You've done this before, you do it again. 'Cause the waves are all around me. It feels like I'm drowning. My God, will you still reach down into your hand?
'Cause even when I'm doubting, your love, it still surrounds me. Oh, you're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come do what only you can do. God, I need you. Oh, and I will build an altar, stacking stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, but that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. And I will build an altar, stacking stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. You're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come do what only you can do. Oh, come do what only you can do. And I will build an altar, stack it stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, but that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. Oh, every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from.
Good morning. Man, what a great question, right? We asked it last week too. What are you soaking in? What am I soaking in? And the answer, right, is usually a lot more than we tend to think, a lot more than we tend to believe, or maybe this is a more honest one. Maybe a lot more than we tend to admit, right? Like we don't like admitting how much we're influenced, how much things cause us to sort of change and sway. We actually soak in way more than we are willing to admit. And so we kicked off this series, Absorption, last week by letting God tell us this from Proverbs 23:7. God says, "A man thinks in his heart, so is he." Right? So as you, as I, as we think in our hearts, so are we. The people, the places and things that you and I are consistently around, the things that we allow in our eyes and in our ears, at some point are going to trickle down to our hearts, and they're going to cause us to become just the people that we are, right? So like whatever you do, whatever you spend time around, the people you spend time around are going to make you who you are and who you're becoming. Last week we said it this way: if you let things in and you let things stay, they will determine who you become. It's good, right? If we let things in and we let them stay and they trickle down into our hearts, they're going to determine who we become. Why is this true? Because you and I are more absorbent than you think. It's true. Oh, no, Rob, not me. Yes, you too. Right? And why? Because God says. And so I want to encourage you guys, if you have ways this is true for you, like you were around a certain kind of person or in certain environments, or you just were exposed to certain things, and you started to notice how those things caused you to change and become different, please send me an email, write something on a connection card. I'd love to hear your story. I asked people about this last week as well, and I got some responses, and they were really mostly tied to this idea from 1 Corinthians 15:33. It says this: "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." That's good, right? Bad company corrupts good character. So when I asked for stories, they were related to this, right? So even for you, if you've been a good person and you have lived well and you have done like right things that you knew to do, that the scriptures instructed you to do your entire life, if you start spending time around questionable people, you will more and more become a questionable person. Right? Do you guys believe me with me on this? You guys are like, we are tired today. Well, let me tell you, like I actually was at the theater on Friday at night and at the theater last night, and I'm going to be at the theater this afternoon. There is a great show, by the way, going on this weekend, and a bunch of people are in it. Christopher's in it, Bethany's in it, a bunch of people in it. It's awesome. This afternoon at 2 is your last opportunity, so maybe consider going and checking that out. Like I said, it's incredible. A bunch of really fun numbers being done. And then next weekend, which is super cool as well, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I already have tickets for all 4 shows, is Elf the Musical. And Christopher is one of the leads. Callie's another one of the leads. Woohoo! So check that out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Man, the things we do, the people we are around, right, they cause us to become more absorbent. In fact, last week we said it this way. We said, you are a sponge. And last week we actually gave out these little sponges. We have more of them if you weren't here or you want one. It was really cool. There was a father who was leaving church last week, and he was just beaming. And I said, "Hey, what's up?" And he said, "Hey, my kid watches online from college and texted me, and he said, 'Hey, Dad, would you get me a sponge?'" Isn't that cool? right? And I love this. And so we encouraged each other last week to take this and put it in a high traffic area, somewhere where we're going to like walk by it all the time and see it as a reminder to us like that we are sponges, we are absorbent. So what are we soaking in? Maybe not just a high traffic area, but maybe for you it's a high temptation area, right? Maybe it's by your computer or somewhere else where you are tempted to soak in things other than God. As just, again, this constant reminder that we need a lot less of all those other things and a lot more of Jesus being soaked into our lives. Last week I also mentioned to you as an update, and I told you I wanted to keep talking about this, so I want to, that 5 years ago we were $1.1 million in debt, facility related, and after a capital campaign and just kind of continuing to service the only mortgage we have left, which is the one on this building, we were down to $385,000 a number of weeks ago. And a few weeks back, we sold the Ridge for $300,000, and we put another $15,000 with it. And so last week I told you we were down to owing just $70,000, which is awesome, right? And I said, like, I believe that we can get to the point by the end of this year, or at least before our annual meeting, that's the last week of January, which I know you guys already have chiseled into your calendars, right? Everybody always comes to that, so thank you for putting that on your calendar right now. Anyway, so I think we can do this. And so we talked about why in the world would we even want to do this? Well, because we want to free up more resources to do ministry, right? We talked about going from $13,000 a month on our primary mortgage to refining it down to $10,000 a month. And more recently, it's been at $8,000 a month. Think of us being able to use $8,000 a month to make a difference for Jesus. That's pretty awesome. And we said one of the ways that we really want to do that was to execute what we've been talking about for the better part of a decade now, that we want to multiply spaces where people can come just as they are, encounter Jesus, and leave different. And we really believe that investing in this way, we could plant 5 healthy churches every 10 years that are safe spaces for people to come and encounter Jesus. So many times people go to church and there's like a million things they need to learn. They got to believe all these things and sign on the dotted line and know how to speak and how to dress and all those kind of things. And we just believe that there needs to be more spaces where people are welcome to come just like they are, encounter Jesus, and leave different. And so if we were able to do this, we could continue to, in even greater ways, change the world together with and for Jesus. And I think a lot of times we talk about people who are far from Jesus as our primary target, and that's true, and that's really always going to be true. But I love when God uses us to help people who are near and far. In fact, last week, someone came to me who has known, loved, and served Jesus for a long time and said to me, being at church today has saved my life. I think that's pretty incredible when God allows us together to be a part of doing that, don't you? And so the idea that we can do more of that is super exciting. And so I told you guys with this initiative, this is all opportunity, no obligation. If you can't contribute toward it, don't worry about it. If you don't want to, that's fine too. But even just last week, and I don't know that there was any extra or special gifts. There's people who just weekly give to the building fund. And so I want to show you this. So after last week, where we were at $70,000 after our check cleared that we sent them, and after just the little bit that came in last week, we're already, without even really trying, down to $67,991.40, which is cool, right? And I want to do this. Did you guys ever do this if you grew up in a church, right, and they were like trying to pay something off, and they had a thermometer, right? Anybody else? Or you go to a vacation Bible school, and it's like, is it the red team or the blue team? Is it the boys or the girls, right? So I'm going to keep showing you our thermometer and where we are in the process so we can be excited about doing this together because we want generosity to be one of the things that we soak in more, don't we? This is, some of you are like, no, I don't. No, we want more stuff. Because it reflects the heart of Jesus when we're more generous. And it's going to impact us, our families, our communities, and even our world if we do more and more of this. So today, as we continue in this series for week 2, I want to talk to you guys about being backseat drivers. And we have a couple more weeks in this series. We still have these little invite cards out at both doors. After this week, these are going to go away. So if you want to invite anyone for the last couple weeks of this series, make sure you grab those today. I've been giving them out like crazy, which has been a lot of fun. Now, when you think about being a backseat driver, it's usually like with the negative connotation, right? I remember forever ago hearing a comedian talk about how cars are structured and how the steering wheel really just gets in the way anyway. And so he had this line, he said, they should just put the steering wheel in the back seat. That's where the people who know how to drive sit anyway, right? And I just want to fully confess, I am a backseat driver. And I am terrible at it. Like, if I'm not like behind the wheel, I like want to like say things and control things and give suggestions and input with most people. And I don't know if anybody else falls into this category, but it gets exponentially worse when it's my spouse driving, because then I feel like it entitles me to even more input. But here's the problem. Anytime I give input, it never results in changes or driving improving. It only ever makes things worse, right? So it's like, I'm just saying that for whatever that's worth. But there can be perks and pitfalls to backseat driving, and I want you to think about that. In just a second, we're going to see a little intro video. But I do want to say, for those of you in particular who are tuning in online, you might have noticed this last month too with our Puppet Master lead-in video. It had a really cool song behind it, but it was copyrighted, so we couldn't play the audio, or you at home wouldn't see anything because things would just get locked down and shut off. So if you're in the room, you're going to hear a little audio. If you're at home, you're not going to hear the audio for this, but it's really cool. Think Toby Max, backseat driver. Check this out. Woo! Nice, right? You guys at home are like, think about it, right? Like, I love that picture of I'm in the back seat. It's a little bit more spacious back here because I don't have stuff on the floor or anything in front of me. And did you catch that one line? Like, back here, without all the distractions of driving, I get to see things that I never would have otherwise seen if I wasn't a little bit further back. That's kind of cool, right? So we have perks to being in the back seat. Sometimes it's more spacious, and sometimes when God's in control and we are just watching and looking in on that, it's powerful how we get to see things and be a part of things and experience things we never would have if we were in the front seat controlling. But when we think about backseat driving as we typically do, right? When you and I slip into control mode instead of allowing God to lead mode, that never works well. That's the bad part. So I'm wondering today if you have ever been in some different environments where you thought to yourself, I know way better than the professionals do. So I want to show you some pictures. I want to give you a few examples of this and sort of get your feedback. So here's the first environment. Look at this. So have you ever sat at home, maybe by yourself or with your family or with some friends, and you couldn't believe the officiating was as bad as it was? And you wondered how they could miss something that was so obviously clear to you. Anybody else? All of us, right? Like we've all been. Now, this is a little bonus material. Isn't it interesting how when the officiating is bad in our favor, we always say things like, well, that's just home field advantage, or yeah, you got to play every play. They're not going to get everything right. But when it's bad against us, then we're like, can you believe this? There's a conspiracy out there, right? Like it's funny how we do that. Now, again, that's just bonus. One of the reasons I think this is true, right, why it seems like the refs always get it wrong and we always get it right, at least in our own minds, is because they have all the pressure in the world on their shoulders, right? In real time, at full speed, their decision has consequences. They feel that pressure. And your thoughts and my thoughts, sitting at home, eating our snacks while we're watching the game, have absolutely no pressure or consequence at all. Right? You see it in slow-mo, you see a couple replays, you're like, maybe I was wrong. Have another chip, right? So that's one of the things. How about this? Let's look at the next environment. This is a little bit different. So here we are, like high school athletics. Someone on the field, on the court, whatever. So have you ever been in a situation like this, where maybe you were sitting in the bleachers, in the stands, by yourself, with your family, with some of your friends, and you couldn't believe the officiating was as bad as it was, and you wondered how they could miss something that was so obviously clear to you? Yeah, right? All of us, again? Now, there's still a pressure differential from being on the field, calling the game, and being in the stands, but it's less of a pressure differential, right? Because you can say whatever you want at home, and there's no problem. If you're in bleachers, especially like with dozens, or maybe if it's really full, 100 or so people at a game, you know what? And you're yelling out, other people and even the refs can hear you. It's not like you're in a giant stadium with tens of thousands of people. So maybe there is some pressure when you want to say things or yell things. But here's what I think. One of the reasons sometimes we feel like, and sometimes we actually do, have better perspective in the bleachers than we do right on the court, is because many times you have better perspective when you're a little further back. Makes sense, right? Sometimes when you're right on things, you can't see them as clearly. Maybe there was something that happened just outside of your periphery that you didn't see, but when you're a little further back, you can see more of the whole court. Now, I just want to say this, even though this is true, Pastor Jeremy, that does not give you permission to get ejected. If you would have said to me years ago, hey, Rob, do you think there's a higher likelihood of any member of the Patterson family getting kicked out of a sporting event, or Jeremy Gessner? I'd have been like, it'd definitely be our family. Bethany is very rowdy at live events, so she'd likely be the one. Who knew? Like, was it once or twice where you had to like listen to the rest of the game from the radio outside? Just once? But kind of touch and go, maybe one or two other times. At least that's what the rumor around town is. All right, how about one more? Can we do one more environment? Okay, look at this one. So now we're in a giant stadium, right, with tens of thousands of other people. So have you ever been in an environment like this with yourself, your family, maybe some friends, and again, you couldn't believe the officiating was this bad and how they could miss something that was so clear and obvious to you? Yes, we all have, right? And there's a big pressure differential, again, because when you're sitting in a huge stadium, you can yell whatever. The refs really aren't going to hear you from most places or care, right? You have the perspective of being way back and seeing the whole field, so sometimes that helps you. But then there's the other thing that we could see so clearly in that picture, right? It was the gift of the Jumbotron, right? Which is awesome. So it's the best of all worlds. It's really the same with backseat driving. So let me say it this way. Perspective is better from further back, but being both near and far is the best. Isn't that cool? Right? When you can be far enough back to see everything, but then you have the Jumbotron that shows you all the other stuff as well. Now here's the truth. In the perfect world, being right on top of the action and having the benefit of being far enough back to see everything and having razor sharp replay from all angles, that would result in the best, wouldn't it? We'd always get it right. But we don't live in a perfect world. Our lives are not like sports. We don't get to see all those different angles. So what do we do about this? And how does this impact what you and I are absorbing? So Jesus, today I pray as we just look at a couple of scriptures for the next few minutes, that first of all, that you would give us the gift of having fewer delusions. Things that we think, things that we allow to stay in our heads and even trickle down to our hearts that aren't completely true, or sometimes are just lies that we believe because they make us feel a little bit better. Jesus, today I just pray you would take delusions from us. I ask that you would give us better sight, that you would help us to see more clearly, that we would have a better perspective. And ultimately, God, may the fruit of today for us be that we would have a plan and a path to know how to gain better sight and insight that you want to give to all of us. God, may this be our experience today, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we're going to look at a few verses from Paul's second letter to the church at Corinth, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 16 through 18, and then we're going to look at one verse from Jeremiah. So here's the 2 Corinthians. Here's the first verse. Paul says, "Therefore, we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day." Now, is this true? Do you think this is true, that for the most part, that when you and I realize that outwardly we are wasting away, that we don't lose heart? Is that true for most people? I think a lot of times we do lose a little heart, don't we? Like it's tough for us. We struggle with this. This isn't true for most people I see. You know, when Bethany and I met and dated and got married, we were super young, so we didn't have many parts of us that were ailing or failing kind of in our early 20s. And so I remember my prayer was always, if God blessed Bethany and I with kids, that they would get her joints and her vision. Because I always had, I needed glasses and my vision was always changing. And really the worst part was astigmatism, so blurriness. That was the worst part. My vision was bad, and my knee, at that time, I knew my knee was bad and I had knee issues. So Jesus, if you would just give any of our offspring Bethany's vision, which was tack sharp, and her joints, we would be in a good place. Now, it's interesting because when I was in my 20s, I got laser eye surgery and loved that, because I hated, if I was golfing or doing any sport or just outside when it was raining, how, I'd get stuff on my glasses or drip sweat. I hated having them, cleaning them. Something would happen, they'd get scratched. It just drove me crazy. So having laser eye surgery was awesome, and my vision pretty much went back to good, other than maybe some haloing and some stuff like that at night, but it was good for a long time. And then, 4 or 5 years ago, I started to notice, and this is when I shifted from hunting with a compound bow to a crossbow, when it was dusky and I would draw and I'd try to look through the tiny peep sight, I couldn't see anything. So I thought, this probably isn't good, right, to be hunting when you can't really see. I actually had a touch-up of the laser eye surgery to try to fix that. But I was always thankful because, like I said, Bethany's vision has always been amazing. So, like, I couldn't see anything. I'm like, hey, babe, what does that sign say 4.2 miles ahead? And she's like, oh, it says, and she just told me what it said. We could tag team, right? So she could see, I would drive, and we'd be just fine. And it was sometime in the last year where I'd say, hey, check this out, and I'd show her something on my phone, and she'd take my hand and adjust it to the right place where she could read it. And I just remember, like, the first time it was whatever, and then, like, when this started to happen more consistently, I was nervous. I'm like, I don't want to say anything here. And then at one point she came to me and she's like, I've made an appointment with the eye doctor. And so now she wears these cute little reading glasses that she has, like, all around. And so my joke now is, hey, who's the cute girl with glasses around our house? I haven't seen her before. So anyway, that's kind of, but yeah, it's crazy because we can't tag team things anymore. And for me, you know, I had like a total hip replacement. My surgeon said, probably in the next 3 years, the other one, which thankfully it's been more than 5 now, but the other one's starting to get a little bit more sore. And then I have a knee that's terrible that my surgeon 4 or 5 years ago said, let's try to get you to 50 before we start messing. Like, so I have all these parts of me. And then yesterday, I know some of you were like, you got to man up, Patterson, right? Others of you, I'm speaking your language. So yesterday, I'm literally like going to the theater, and I'm like walking along, and my heel on my right foot is literally exploding with pain. I'm telling Liam, you may have to carry me, Liam. He was not in on the carrying me thing, but it's crazy. So in the midst of all of this wasting away, how do we not lose heart? Well, the text tells us, right? Therefore, we do not lose heart. And when the Bible says therefore, you look to see what it's there for. And so right before this, we see that the text is talking about believing in the power of the resurrection, right? Jesus was raised again, and we too, because we believe in him, will be raised again to new life as well. And so one of the ways that we cannot lose heart is by us believing in the power of the resurrection, and not just as an intellectual truth, but an experiential one. Doesn't that help us? If we know that as things are wasting away and getting more difficult and we have diminishing capacities, knowing that God is going to one day make us new and make us better than we have ever been. That's cool, right? So we got to remember that. That's how we don't lose heart. And then, and how does the text end, right? Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. And so another way that we cannot lose heart is by allowing this inner renewal that God is doing within us to become more important to us than the external decay we're experiencing. Man, it's like $1 billion industry every year in our country, in our world. Take this, you'll look better, you'll feel better, you know, like you can keep all the external wasting away stuff at bay and you can be young forever, right? And it's like you can take some of those things, but like just Google search like celebrities who have botched Botox, right? Not good. We are going to waste away, but God is doing an internal thing, and at some point that's got to become more important to us than what's happening on the outside. So if we want to see better, but our sight only diminishes, what do we do with that? And here's what I think. If there wasn't this transition, right? If we didn't start to waste away and have our capacities diminish, the thing that would happen is we would long for here more than we long for heaven. And at some point, it's good for us to start realizing this isn't our home, right? Like God didn't make us to sort of live here forever. I actually have a really good friend who said this. He said, I ain't trying to live forever, right? That's good. We shouldn't be trying to like live here forever. But sometimes maybe those things are things we say because we're feeling mostly good, right? And things change a little bit when we feel less. Here's how the passage continues. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So this reference to light and momentary struggles here, or troubles, is the wasting away that we're experiencing. And I love what the brother of Jesus has to say about this. James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Allow perseverance to finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Isn't that cool? Isn't it cool that God uses every second of our life here, all of these light and momentary troubles that we're facing, to achieve for us an eternal glory that far outweighs anything we might have to deal with here? This is really good news, isn't it? That God uses every second of your life and my life to prepare us for eternity. We've talked about this a number of ways over the years here at New Hope. A couple times I've used this rope, and it's like eternally long. And so we've talked about how there's a beginning and an end, and usually I have this like snaking off stage, and so I will talk about how there was a beginning, and then I'll pull the rope and pull the rope and pull the rope, and at some point in this long rope is just this tiny piece of black tape. And it reminds us what the scriptures tell us, right? That our life, we are here today and we're gone tomorrow. The Bible says that our life is like a mist or a vapor. So even if you or I if you live to be 150 years old, right? It's still such a brief window in all of eternity. And so what do we do, right? What do we do with this life? Are we willing to experience some of these brief and momentary troubles and struggles in order to achieve a greater glory that outlasts all these things? Because now is nothing compared to eternity. So with this in mind, who or what are you willing to suffer for? That's a good question, isn't it? I think if most people were honest, like we would have I would make some sacrifices for my God. You know, we'd say things like that. But for most people, if they're being completely honest, the thing that we are most willing to sacrifice for is ourselves, right? If it gets me to a better place, if it gets me more of what I'm hoping for, shooting for, more of what I would like, yes, I'm willing to struggle to sacrifice a little bit for that. Pastor Bud and I, this week, were in a meeting with a CEO, and he was talking about this whole idea of, he was starting some different foundations to give away more money. And here's a guy who literally is wealthy enough to buy anything that he wants. And here's what he said: giving money away is so much better than buying more stuff for myself. And then he sort of in that meeting kind of went into like saying, I bought this for myself, I bought that for myself. You buy something new and shiny, guess what? It doesn't stay new and shiny very long. It gets used, it gets dented, it gets scratched, it gets messed up. And now you're like fretting and thinking about this thing that you bought and spent all this money on that isn't like it once was. And he's like, man, when I give money to people and it changes their situation or changes their lives, that is so much better. And I just remember hearing him, and this guy knows and loves Jesus, and I mean, it was like speaking to me, right? Because I think most people can see this intellectually. Yeah, it makes sense why I get myself stuff, and that never, ever adds up to what I think it will. But when I give money away to things or to people and it changes the game, like we love that, right? That is better. So we can see it intellectually, but for most people, we don't do much testing of this in our real lives. We don't actually become generous. We don't actually give stuff away. And I wonder what it would look like if you and I let Jesus do this in us and through us. Maybe a good question for us is this: what is one way you can start living today to show that eternity is more important to you than here and now? We would all probably say that, oh yeah, eternity is way more important. What is one thing, it doesn't have to be a big thing, it could be a little thing, that you could start doing today to signify, to show that eternity is more important to you than the here and the now? Here's the last verse in that text. So, right, because of all this stuff, because of our light and momentary troubles, because of all this wasting away, because of this, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Oh, for this type of sight. The gift of being able to see and live with eternity in mind. I love how Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21 says this: "Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moths and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So church, where is your treasure? Where is your heart? Right? What are the things you look at? What fires you up? Let me ask it a little differently. Where do you find your dim eyes looking? That's a good question, isn't it? Like, just left to our own devices, where do our diminishing, our dim eyes look? Now, for a lot of us, it's to things, right? We always want to look to things. So much so that we lose our minds at the idea that there are going to be less toys for Christmas due to the global supply chain shortages. You know what? If the idea of your kids or your grandkids or your nieces or nephews or you yourself, of you getting toys, right, that at some point are just going to be discarded, forgotten about, or broken, if that is like the prime way that you celebrate and engage in Christmas, the idea that there's going to be fewer toys around this Christmas is a huge gift for us, and it might allow us to refocus on what Christmas is truly all about, right? Which has nothing to do with cheap, crappy presents, and everything to do with God giving us Himself as the greatest present ever, so that we could be forgiven of our sins. For some people, maybe it's not things. Maybe for some of us, the thing we look to, our dim eyes look to, is ourselves, right? My thoughts, my feelings, my desires. But the problem with looking to things or ourselves is that we are too close to both of them to have good perspective, right? It's why, like, sometimes people come and they're like, hey, this is what's going on. Rob, what do you think? And I give a thought, and they're like, whoa, thank you so much. Like, that was brilliant. And it's like, it wasn't brilliant. It's just that in your situation, when you're this close to it, it's hard to see. And when I am like a little bit further back, it's easy to see. Sometimes we don't need a genius to help us. We just need someone with a little bit of perspective, right? It helps. And again, when we're talking about our things or our relationships or our lives, we're too close to have good perspective. The other thing our dim eyes could look to and should look to is our God. Because He's the only one who makes sense for us to look to. And this is true for multiple reasons. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever sabotaged yourself? Here's what I mean by that. Maybe it looked like this. Oh, you know, like I have this need in my life. Or maybe it's not really a need, if I'm being honest, but it's a want, and it's a really important want. And so I can take some of this money I have in my retirement account, and I know it hasn't matured or I'm not the right age yet, but I could take it out and only pay a 10% penalty and then pay the tax penalty on it, and then we could use that to do this thing we want to do, right? And then like a number of years later, when you're like, oh my goodness, like I don't even remember what I spent that money on because it's not even important to me anymore. But when I'm doing the math and realize I have to work years or decades longer before I could even think about retiring because I spent my money on something dumb I really didn't need even though I thought it was that important. Come on, anybody ever sabotage yourself? Me? Just me? Am I the only one? No, you say thank you. A couple people like doing this. Right? Hiding. We sabotage ourselves. So the last verse from a different passage, Jeremiah, shows us what our God offers. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in a future. God, the one who has the best perspective, he's far back, and the best vision, the best sight ever, has plans for you and me. Individually, our families, as a church. And these are plans that provide prosperity, hope, and a future. Like, this is good stuff, right? One of the theological questions that's been asked a lot over centuries is this: is God immanent or is he transcendent? Is he close by or is he far away? Is he near or is he far? And as I think about this, it sort of makes me think if you grew up with Sesame Street, right? Do you remember that little thing Grover used to do? Where he'd be like, I am near. Then he right? I am far. And, and then, once again near, right? And at some point he kind of runs back. He's like, near. Like he kind of. We think of that because that's what we do as human beings, right? Like when we're trying to be like close and far, and it wears us out. But here's the truth about God. God is the only one who is both near and far at the same time. He's in all places at once perfectly. Any people, any parents here who feel like your life is chaotic enough where you feel like you have to be everywhere, near and far, all at once? Right? And so even when you do that, do you ever have times where you're like in a place but you had to like move so quickly to get there that you're there but you're not there in perfect awareness? Your mind is somewhere else even though your body's present, right? God is everywhere perfectly, and he has perfect awareness everywhere he is. And so it would make perfect sense for us to trust only in a God who is both near and far. But for a lot of us, what do? We say, well, God, you didn't really see what I saw. And to that, our God says, no, I did see it. And I saw it with perfect up-close sight and with the perspective that comes from a vantage point, right? God is the only one who can see what's happening in our lives in perfect detail and also has the vantage point of being far enough back to see everything. In fact, it's like you and I building something as kids and like looking down and playing it. Like God exists inside of time and space and outside of time and space. He sees the beginning and the end. He sees our past, our present, and our future all at the exact same time. How awesome is that, right? So he knows everything. He sees exactly what you've gone through. Sometimes we're like, well, God, you might have seen it, but I know you didn't feel what I felt. And God looks at us and he says, oh, I absolutely feel everything you feel. And I feel it with the depth of experience only possible by a perfect parent who knows you, who loves you, who knit you together in your mother's womb and has cared for you every second of your life. Okay, God, maybe you see me and maybe you felt what I felt, but God, you just haven't walked in my shoes. And to that, God says, oh, I've walked in your shoes all right. And in fact, you have no idea how much I have carried you through this journey of life. And because all of this is true, let me ask you again, look at our series graphic. What are you soaking in? What are you soaking in? So let me speak to to those of you who are in here and you're backseat drivers, not the kind who have like willingly and lovingly moved back to gain perspective and trust God. No. Like those of you who are in the back seat, but you're like, itching and breaking out and wanting to give all the directions, right? Like those of us who are control freaks. And I know you talked last month about control freak. It's not nice to bring it up again this month. We've left that behind. Well, here we go, right? So, one, will you just sit back instead of controlling? If you're a backseat driver, will you just sit back? Will you just take a deep breath? Will you let the situation happen? Will you let God be in control? Number two, will you trust and soak in a God who has the best sight and perspective of all? See, you can move a little bit further back and that will give you better perspective. But when you trust God, He has the best perspective of all. And so I just want to create a moment before we sing this closing song where we can respond. And so here's the idea. Will you move back and will you yield control? Right? Well, instead of being in that front seat, instead of having your hands on the wheel, on all the controls, will you willingly move back and will you yield control? Remember a time when I was, maybe 8th or 9th grade, and my mom said to me, "Son, you spending time with that one friend is not wise or helpful for you. I don't think you should do that anymore." And I remember thinking to myself, well, that person needs a friend too, and who are you to tell me that? And so I told her no, and I kept spending time around that person. And it's interesting, as much as I was passionate about that, and as much as I believed I was right, I couldn't see like my mom could see. She was right, and I was wrong. Church, today, I want you to know, we might think we can see, and we might even be able to see, but we can't see anywhere close to as well as our God can. And listen, our God isn't like, well, He was great back in Bible times, but He's gotten older now, so, He's kind of like the old guy with the cane and the long beard. No. Our God is just as good as He's always been. Like Amy said to us, right? Like, He's the God who was in the lion's den, in the fiery furnace. He is the same God, and He is just as good today, and you and I can trust Him and soak more of Him in. And so, Jesus, we declare You are just as good. You're just as good as You have ever been. And as we declare this truth today, I pray that You would help us not only to slip further back and to trust You, but Jesus, help us to fully rely on You, to yield control to You, because You have perfect sight up close and far away. God, may we benefit from who You are and what You offer to us. Help us to see You and to follow You today. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
So weak, got this weight upon my chest, and I can't stop forgetting, my God, that You never left. You're right here with me. Still I'm convinced You're hiding. Oh God, would You remind me that You're still just as good as when I met You. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that You're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come do what only You can do. God, I need You. even when I'm doubting, your love it still surrounds me. Oh, you're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come and do what only you can do. God, I need you. And I will build an altar, stacking stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter. That don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. And I will build an altar, stacking stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter. That don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. You're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come and do what only you can do. Oh, come and do what only you can do. And I will build an altar, stack it stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, but that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. Oh, every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. Amen. It's easy to forget, isn't it? When things seem to be going well or in our favor, it's easy to know that God's there and that He's good. But as soon as things start going south, we forget, don't we? We forget how good He is and how He came through the last time we went through a hard situation. But this song is all about, remembering God's goodness, and that bridge is talking about building altars of remembrance. That's what they used to do when God did something and they wanted to remember that moment. They'd stack up these stones as an altar to remind them of God's goodness and how He came through in those situations. And so, I would encourage you to be proactive in doing things to help remind yourself of God's goodness. Maybe that's another use for the sponge, the little white sponge. If you have that in a place that you see it, so you can remember to be soaking in more of Jesus. Maybe it can also be a reminder of God's goodness in your life. So, speaking of reminders.
I've got reminders.
All right.
Yes. Two things. The angel tree is out in the lobby. So if you have never taken advantage of that and been a part of it, this is a great year to do so. There is stuff like winter coats that kids need. And, it's not just a bunch of toys in there. It's necessities that kids in the community need. So information about that is in the scoop. And then also this Wednesday is our blood drive from 1 to 7. And we need your blood. I know I stand up here and harp on that all the time, but it's really bad right now. We have less than a day's supply of O on the shelves. So we need blood products. So if you could donate, that would be fantastic. I know we talk about donating, to help, and it's not always about what you get, but this time on Wednesday, there's two things. One you absolutely get. It's a $10 Amazon gift card that you'll get via email after you donate. And then the second thing you could possibly get is we're going to raffle off an Apple Watch. And the raffle is not Northern Ohio. It's not Ashland County. It's only for New Hope. It's only for that drive on Wednesday. So, if you want to give it to Jeremy, you can give it to Jeremy. If you want to give it to me, if you want to keep it, you want to give it away for Christmas, whatever you do with it is your business. But someone that donates on Wednesday is going to win the raffle, or Apple Watch. If there is a time that you are available, that there is not a spot out there on the signups available, just show up and we will get you in, all right? We need blood that badly. So just walk in the door and we'll take your blood nicely.
Hey, also before you go, as we wrap up here, if you could help stack up the chairs for us to get ready for the blood drive. Just 5 or 6 high is plenty, and you don't need to move them anywhere. Just make some stacks around the room, and that helps us get ready. So have a great week. We'll see you next time.